Hey, Algebra 2, talking about imaginary numbers today. So, an imaginary number is represented by I, and I is the square root of -1. So, we are never allowed to have a negative inside of a square root. So, we represent that -1 by I. That's our imaginary number. And then if we ever square I, so I squared, well, anytime we take the square of a square root, it just gets rid of the square root. They kind of cancel. And so I squared is -1. So if we look here in our first example, we have x squared equals -25. We want to get x by itself, so we're going to take the square root on both sides. Whatever we do to one side, we got to do to the other. And the square root and the square on the x are going to cancel, so we have x by itself. Now, when we take the square root of something, we're going to have two answers. So we have a plus or a minus. We have a positive and negative answer. And then inside that square root, I split up this -25 to 25 times -1. So to simplify, we have x equals plus or minus, well, the square root of 25 is 5, and then we have the square root of -1 left over. But what can represent the square root of -1? Right there, that's our I, so our final answer is plus or minus 5i. We have two answers for this problem. Still working with I, but we are adding and subtracting different terms. So in this example, 3i minus 4 minus -I plus 8. When there's a negative right here, we have to distribute. When there's a positive right here, you would not have to distribute. You could just drop the parentheses, and we'll see that down there. So down here, so negative times -I, that's just a positive I, and then negative times a positive 8 is -8. So right here, once we get the plus sign in the middle of the parentheses, we can drop the parentheses and start combining our like terms. So we had a 3i and a positive I, that's 4i, -4 minus 8, that's -12, and we have our final answer. And we would call this AI plus B form. Multiplying here, we are going to FOIL. If we ever multiply i's together, that's I squared. And as we saw before, I squared was -1. So we're going to FOIL with the first term first. So 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times -3i is -12i. 3i times 4 is plus 12i. And 3i times -3i, a positive times a negative is a negative. 3 times 3 is 9. I times I is I squared. Well, these happen to cancel, -12i and plus 12i. So all that we have left is 16 minus 9i squared. Well, what does I squared equal? It equals -1, so I'm going to substitute this into here, and we're multiplying. So 16 minus 9 times -1. Well, -9 times -1 is a positive 9, and 16 plus 9 is 25. Last example here, we have an I on the bottom of a fraction. We don't like that. And so in order to get rid of this 4 minus I, we're actually going to multiply the top and the bottom of this fraction by the opposite sign, so 4 plus I on top and bottom. We're going to distribute, so 10 times 4 and 10 times I, that's 40 plus 10i. Foiling down here, that's 16, that's plus 4i, -4i or minus 4i, and then -I squared. So negative times a positive is a negative. I times I is I squared. Well, we can cancel the inside right here. Plus 4i minus 4i, that cancels out right there in the green. And we're left with 40 plus 10i over 16 minus I squared. But what does I squared equal? It's -1. So the bottom is really 16 minus -1. And then that's a leave, change. So we're changing these signs to 16 plus 1. That is 17 on the bottom. And we're going to, again, try to get it into A plus BI form. So 40 over 17, do the number on the left first, and then get the sign with the second pair of numbers. So it's kind of that heart technique. So then we have 10i over 17, and we have our answer in A plus BI form.